What a day. I don't know about you, but our heads are spinning. First, Trump on a road trip, but it's a short one. 16 blocks from the White House to the Supreme Court for a first. It is the first time in history the head of the executive branch, the president, inside the Supreme Court chamber watching the head of the judicial branch, the Supreme Court. 3 of the 9 justices aren't strangers to the president. He put the 3 on the high court bench. President Trump made this trek to the high court to watch the argument about his executive order abolishing birthright citizenship. Are babies born in America automatically citizens or not? Trump says no, but a trial court struck down his executive order banning automatic citizenship. The court said Trump's executive order is unconstitutional. Then the United States Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit agreed it's unconstitutional. So now it is up to the United States Supreme Court. What hints did we get today from the justices about how the high court might rule? That's coming up. But get ready. From our nation's capital to space, in 2 hours and 25 minutes, the whole world will be watching. America is going back to the moon. This is a live look at the Kennedy Space Center in Cape Canaveral, Florida. It is NASA's first manned mission to the moon in more than 50 years. 4 astronauts about to make a 10-day journey out of this world. What are they going to experience? What should they expect? In just a few moments, I will speak with former astronaut and senator about this mission. And now, from the moon, we're going to go all the way back to Washington, because in about 5 hours from the Oval Office, something else the world will be watching. This time, President Trump addressing the nation. But we all know the whole world's going to be listening. Could it be boots on the ground, or could it be an end to the war? What is Trump going to say? Buckle up. Here we go. And today, President Trump had to do something that is just so unlike him. He had to be quiet for hours. The president, as I noted, attended a hearing at the United States Supreme Court. The White House released these photos of Trump entering the Supreme Court and of him leaving with Attorney General Pam Bondi. There are no, and there were no, cameras inside the court, but outside there were big crowds and some protesters. Today, the 9 Supreme Court justices heard argument whether President Trump's executive order banning birthright citizenship is constitutional or not. 2 courts, as I noted, a federal district court and the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit, have already ruled Trump's executive order is unconstitutional. So now the U.S. Supreme Court gets the final word. On Inauguration Day, by the way, January 20, 2025, Trump signed that executive order. He declared that children born to parents who are in the United States illegally or temporarily are not American citizens. Trump has argued the system of birthright citizenship has been abused. He says it is and has been an incentive for people to come to the United States illegally or take part in something known as birth tourism. That's when pregnant women come to America to give birth so that their children can have U.S. citizenship. So here's a little history lesson. After the Civil War, Congress looked for wording to grant citizenship to the freed slaves. So in 1868, the 14th Amendment was ratified. It says, quote, all persons born or naturalized in the United States are subject to the jurisdiction thereof, are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. Then 30 years later came United States versus Wong Kim Ok. In 1873, Wong Kim Ok was born in San Francisco to Chinese immigrant parents. His parents were not U.S. citizens. In 1894, Wong traveled to China. A year later, he tried to return to the U.S. He was denied entrance to the United States under the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882. In 1898, the Supreme Court, in a 6-2 decision, one justice not participating, held that Wong was an American citizen by virtue of his birth on U.S. soil and could not be excluded from entering the U.S. Wong Kim Ok has never been overruled by the Supreme Court, which brings us to today. What will the High Court do? Professor Emeritus at Harvard Law School, Alan Dershowitz joins me. Nice to see you, sir. And I know you were listening to the arguments today. What do you think?
Well, I think that both sides missed the point. This is not a case where the Supreme Court gets the last word. The 14th Amendment ends with the following statement. Congress shall have the power to enforce by appropriate legislation the provisions of this article. And so Congress has the power to decide who is subject to the jurisdiction of the United States. If Congress were to pass a law saying that people who come for birth tourism or who just pass through the United States are not subject to the jurisdiction of the country, then the 14th Amendment doesn't grant them citizenship. Now, neither side wants that result. Both sides want extreme results so that neither side argues sensibly for a Solomonic solution which would divide the baby, literally the tourist baby, in half. If they lived in the United States, if they spent time here, if they were really subject to the laws of the United States, yes, then they're citizens. But if they just pass through, then Congress can say, no, they're not. So the Supreme Court may not get the last word. And I suspect we may see a decision that says, look, the president doesn't have that authority, so his executive order is not constitutional, but Congress does. And then the ball is thrown back into the court of Congress to see whether they can pass legislation deciding who is subject to the jurisdiction of the United States and who isn't.
You know, it's sort of frightful to hear you say that because, you know, it's once again Congress that's just, you know, that's just not doing its job. I mean, they didn't do their job with the TSA, so we got the problem there. Congress hasn't sorted out immigration, so they have the problem there. The Congress hasn't sorted out this specific issue, so now we have this problem where we've got two people. We've got the executive branch being pitted against a number of citizens on it. When the Congress, if they just give us some sense of direction and order, but they don't.
And the amendment says Congress should. It explicitly says in Section 5 that Congress has the right to define what these things mean. Remember, being subject to the jurisdiction thereof is not self-defining. It could mean a lot of things. Of course, anybody in the United States is subject to the laws. If you drive like Tiger Woods drives and your car turns over, doesn't matter if you're in the United States for 5 minutes, you're subject to the law. But you're not subject, for example, to taxation or when we had a draft, to being drafted. So it all depends on Congress. So, finger right on.
Okay, so what happens if the Supreme Court rules, as you suggest, that basically this is Congress's problem? And so basically, it amounts to no decision. It will give no direction whatsoever other than to toss into a lap of a group that doesn't do its job. So tell me then what happens.
Well, first of all, I think the Supreme Court is going to say that the executive order is unconstitutional. The justices seem to be lining up, maybe even 8-1, in that direction. The question is whether they have dictum. And I haven't read all the briefs, but in the argument, nobody called for that. They have the power to have dictum, and all they need is one sentence saying, but Congress can define who is subject to the jurisdiction of the United States. I think that's going to happen because if the president loses, he's not going to take it sitting down. So he's going to try to go to Congress and say, wait a minute, let's stop this birth tourism through legislation. And I think he'd win there. I think he could get Democrats and Republicans to say.
I don't know if he could. I don't know, because he's tried to get even this identification for voting, and something like 75% of the American people think there should be 75%. 75% say that you should show identification for voting. He can't get that. So what makes you think that he would get anything on birth tourism?
Yeah, and it depends on whether or not we keep the 60-person filibuster veto and all of those things. But, you put your finger right on it. Historically, in the last several decades, Congress has become the weakest branch of government. It does very little because of the filibuster. It ties up almost everything. It can't get anything done. And that's why you see so much more power being diverted to the courts, which are supposed to be the least dangerous branch, the least influential branch. And of course, the president's supposed to be the second most important, not the first. Article 2 of the Constitution, the president has clearly become the most important branch of the government.
We'll see what happens. We'll find out probably by the end of June when the term ends.
Which indicates
what's that?
Third term. So let's see if the president is strong enough to overcome.
Well, can I just ask one question? I didn't know you had a new book, but tell me, what number is that?
This is 63. And
okay, that's crazy. I don't know how you do 63 books, but whatever. I'm going to get it tonight when I get off the air. Professor Alan Dershowitz, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Coming up, President Trump has a message about Iran. Find out when the record continues.
Did you know that increasing carbon dioxide in the air is providing great benefits to Earth's ecosystems and to humanity? Because of more CO2, forests are expanding, deserts are shrinking, plants are resisting drought, and ecosystems are thriving. According to NASA, plant growth is increasing worldwide. In fact, more CO2 is causing crop production to outpace population growth, allowing us to better feed a hungry world. CO2 is essential to life on Earth. We need more of it, not less. We all need the truth. Trusted scientists are providing a greater understanding of Earth's climate, and the future looks bright. There's a lot to know about CO2. Find out more at co2coalition.org.
Need blood pressure support? Total Beets contain a patented key ingredient clinically shown to deliver 2 times better blood pressure support. That's why Total Beets is the #1 best-selling beets brand in America. Take control of your health with Total Beets. Search Amazon now for Total Beets.
Don't kibble your dog.
Hey, Dr. Marty.
Hey, back.
What's wrong with this?
Let's check it out. It's still kibble, which means they're ultra-processed. At Dr. Marty, we freeze-dry premium meats, fruits, and vegetables, and it's available at your local pet store.
When you order a Storyworth book, you're supporting American manufacturing. We print them in 3 U.S. facilities where skilled craftspeople turn your family memories into a legacy that lasts for generations. A lifetime of stories made in the USA. Storyworth.
In just a few hours, in prime time, 9 p.m. Eastern, President Trump will address the nation, but of course, the entire world is going to watch. The topic, Iran. Yesterday, the president did give us a little sneak peek.
The U.S. will be gone or done with the war in 2
I
or 3
think with
weeks?
2 or 3 weeks. Yeah.
3 weeks. If it is
We'll leave. We're finishing the job, and I think within maybe 2 weeks, maybe a couple of days longer to do the job. But we want to knock out every single thing they have. Now, it's possible that we'll make a deal before that.
Tonight is the first night of Passover, and bombs are still dropping in the Middle East. Middle East correspondent Zach Andrews joins me from Tel Aviv, where it is 11:13 p.m. Zach.
Greta, good to be with you. The sun's setting here on this side of the world. Passover has started for millions, and just as the sun was about to set, Iran with their largest missile attack in weeks into Israel, 6 attacks in under an hour right before Passover began. It appears most of the missiles were successfully intercepted. We don't have any reports of casualties from those 6 attacks consecutive in the span of about 40 minutes right before sunset here. So good sign there. But Hezbollah also firing a missile at Tel Aviv as well. There's no early warning, advanced warning for that missile, just the alarms and the missile coming out of nowhere with how close these are being launched from, not from Iran, but from Lebanon, just about 100 miles north. No reports of casualties from that Hezbollah attack. However, we are told that an 11-year-old girl was critically wounded from the morning's first attack of the day, a cluster warhead. Her father was also wounded, and we're told that she's fighting for her life right now at a hospital in Tel Aviv, that she lost consciousness as paramedics first arrived and began first aid on that scene from a cluster warhead again this morning. To our east in Baghdad, Iraq, American freelance journalist Shelley Kittleson was abducted last night in central Baghdad. Our sources do believe she is still alive and being held hostage. I'm told by a senior State Department source that she had been warned multiple times of a direct threat to her life and that she needed to flee Baghdad. We actually used the same local Iraqi fixer, as they call it, a local journalist that can help you navigate the area. We were in Iraq about 2 months ago. So we used that same local, and he was telling me that she was messaging him last night that they were trying to get a ride to Erbil, Iraq, but that road from Baghdad is pretty dangerous. But she did know about that warning from the State Department that there was a credible threat against her. We do see now that there has been some arrests that are made. This is a post from Dylan Johnson at the State Department. He writes that an individual with ties to the Iranian-backed, Iranian-aligned militia group, Kataib Hezbollah, believed to be involved in the kidnapping, has been taken into custody by Iraqi authorities, and Iraq remains a level 4 travel advisory. Americans are advised not to travel to Iraq for any reason and to leave Iraq now. And finally, tonight, we do have a statement or a letter that has been released by Iran's President Masoud Pezeshkian. He had said earlier in the day through state media that there would be an important letter released to the American people. We've since read that letter. It's similar rhetoric of what we've seen before, saying that Iran's not the aggressor, that there's no direct hostility that Iranians hold towards Americans, the American people, but it's the U.S. and the U.S. government that is blamed for this conflict. Of course, a lot of historical grievances brought up, and really just a direct appeal to the American populace that this war should end and that the Iranians are not any direct threat, that they're not trying to get a nuclear weapon, and that they would never use a nuclear weapon. So, again, a letter filled with rhetoric that, for the most part, we've heard before coming from these Iranian leaders. Greta?
Zach Anders, thank you, in Tel Aviv. Former NATO Supreme Allied Commander General Wesley Clark joins me. Good afternoon, sir. And obviously, we're waiting to hear what the president says tonight, and we don't know for sure what he's going to say. But one of the things that might come up is NATO. And while maybe Article 5 has not been invoked, although I think it could be argued that some of the attacks on some of the bases invokes an attack on an Article 5 member, nonetheless, NATO has been rather quiet. Could NATO have joined, maybe not under Article 5, but could have NATO have gotten more involved in protecting, for instance, the Strait of Hormuz?
It's a very good question, Greta. The truth is, President Trump's spoken both ways. At one point, he said, we don't need their help. At another point, he asks for it. The truth is, they do have some minesweepers. They do have some aircraft. They do have troops. But protecting the Strait of Hormuz, really, that's not what we're about right now. What we're about is, if we're going to take it by force, it's a major military operation. It's not something we can rush into, and it should take several weeks, if not a couple of months, to prepare for such an operation. When that emerges, probably go to them and ask for help.
But I suspect that the president made that remark about how we don't need their help in light of the fact that on February 28th, when the military was first engaged, U.S. engaged, they wouldn't let us refuel at their bases, and that really was sort of the beginning of like, we're not going to help, you know. And this was going to have to be the U.S. and Israel alone to destroy the threat of nuclear enrichment and weapons in Iran. And I think that the president, who sometimes gets a chip on his shoulder, was probably, I mean, nobody wanted to help. Those countries didn't want to help, but the gas station to Western Europe is Russia, and they get the rest of their oil through the Strait of Hormuz. We have our own.
Yeah, it's a valid argument, but the other argument about it, Greta, is that NATO is essentially in the U.S. interests more than the European interests. We need the stability of Europe. We need their investment money. We need their technology. They're the largest foreign investor and foreign trade partner with the United States. So having a close relationship with them is in our interest. Now, when this war got started, we didn't do any consultation. We wanted to do it by surprise. We didn't clarify with them that we were going or what the objectives were. So naturally, we caught a lot of them off guard. And you got a reaction because in the past, there's been a lot of friction between the United States and Europe over various statements and other things. And so I think it's time to sort of bury the hatchet here and try to work together because President Trump's exactly right. They do get oil through the Strait of Hormuz. That's part of what they need in Europe. And so they need to work with us on it. So I think, you know, we'll catch, let's say, we'll catch more bees with honey here than we will with anything else.
Well, I do agree with you that probably they're going to be watching very closely tonight, those NATO members, about what the president says.
Yeah, we do need to watch it. And I hope the president will give the clear and cogent explanation of why we're there, what we're doing, what the path forward is. But if the path is simply opening the straits, and that's fine. I'm sure that we'll get the Europeans to help provide a guard force under international auspices. And that's what's been talked about. But if the path is to invade and occupy Hormuz, then it's major warfare. And that's another issue. And we should bring our European partners in on it, but we shouldn't expect that it's an easy lift. It's going to be really tough for them and for us if we come in because the Iranians have a formidable military defensive capability. We see it every day in what's going on there. And the Russians are helping with drones and technology and targeting. So it will be a much different campaign than we've ever fought before.
General Wesley Clark, always nice to talk to you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, this next thing goes under the headline, things you can't make up, and on top of that is absolutely terrifying. On March 15th, a Delta regional flight that took off from Ronald Reagan Washington National Airport was making its final approach to land at New York's LaGuardia Airport. But this is where the story gets really crazy and really terrifying. The pilot of the Delta flight contacted the JFK Airport's control tower for clearance to land. JFK is a completely different airport than LaGuardia. It's about 10 miles away from LaGuardia. Here's the exchange between the pilot and the air traffic controller at JFK.
Tower 5752, confirm clear to land 4.
That's who?
Brickyard 5752.
Brickyard 5752. I'm sorry, where are you?
2 mile final, Brickyard 5752.
2 mile final where?
Runway 4.
At LaGuardia?
Yes, ma'am.
This is Kennedy Tower. Please go to LaGuardia Tower.
Oh my goodness, all right.
That's crazy.
Yeah, sure is crazy. I'm just glad they were able to get that straightened out before a potential disaster occurred. With all the recent problems at these airports, I think, by the way, I think stock in Greyhound bus is about to go way up. Coming up, finally, after more than 50 years, we're just 2 hours away. That when the record continues.
I'm Elmer Heinrich, at 92 years of age with my wife Shirley, who is 83. Now, both of us are still cutting a wide swath in life, all because of Immuno 150. Now, neither of us have any kind of sickness, and we're as flexible as we were 30 years ago, and we still do the physical things we did 30 years ago. Now, we are asking you to use Immuno 150 like we do. Give it a chance for at least 90 days so that you can see what 70 plant minerals and 80 additional nutrients can do for you. You won't believe it. Immuno 150 is an awesome nutritional supplement. There's nothing like it.
Yes, it really is incredible.
Yeah, try it. You will be surprised. Order online or call the number listed on the screen, but don't place your order until after you've watched the 3 videos on our website. Thank you from both of us, and God bless.
Our family started Cane Brew with a dream and a lot of hard work. Now we're thriving, growing, and hiring. Artificial intelligence has made all the difference for our business. We're a case study for how AI is strengthening American manufacturing. Washington needs to help AI flourish. It's vital to our economic security. We cannot let China dominate these technologies. America must innovate and win. Let's protect our competitive edge.
What if your GLP-1 for weight loss was as easy to take as a mint? Small, discreet, and easy. Think about that, no needles. This is compounded tirzepatide, a mint-flavored tablet designed to fit into your daily routine. You simply let it dissolve under your tongue. No mixing, filling, or storing your own syringes. Tirzepatide helps curb appetite and supports healthier eating by reducing cravings, including for sweets and carbs. And when your appetite feels under control, it can make it easier to eat less and move intentionally towards your weight loss goals. If weight loss has been on your mind, this may be the needle-free option you've been looking for, a simple daily tablet, as easy to take as a mint. Getting started is fast and surprisingly accessible. Just complete a quick online physician consultation. Here's how.
Save $50 with promo code SLIM at noneedles.com/slim. That's promo code SLIM at noneedles.com/slim.
What's gold is new again. Pardon the pun. But considering gold has been used as currency since around 550 BC, it has been on fire the past year. I'm here with Daniel Boston, the founder of Preserve Gold. Why is gold so stable and such a good investment for many people?
Take the central bank, for example, the Federal Reserve. They print money out of thin air, and then they take that printed money to go buy hard assets like gold to protect themselves against the very risks that they're creating. So I always tell people, don't do what the big players are telling you to do. Do what they're doing themselves.
Yeah, watch what they're doing.
That's correct.
Okay. If people are interested in investing with Preserve Gold, how do they get started?
Text Newsmax to 50505 to get your free information and up to $15,000 in free gold and silver with a qualified purchase. That's right. Text Newsmax to 50505.
All right. No way you can miss it.
Well, you better get ready. In a little less than 2 hours, Artemis II is set to blast off from the Kennedy Space Center. The crew of 4 will be the first humans to go beyond the Earth's orbit in more than 50 years. Their mission, a trip around the moon and, of course, make it back to Earth. This is going to take about 10 days. So what else is at stake? Here's what NASA Administrator Jared Isaacman told me yesterday.
So this is a test flight of a vehicle that has never had humans on it before. So we need to go out, put it through its paces, test out the ecosystem. Those are the systems that keep those astronauts alive, and get really comfortable for the next mission, which will launch in 2027, Artemis II. That's where we're going to take the same spacecraft, Orion, dock it with the various landers, get comfortable with the integrated operations of the spacecraft and the landers, and then in 2028, before the end of President Trump's term, Artemis IV will land those astronauts on the moon, and we are doing it different this time. We are not just going for the rocks, the footprints, and the flag. We're going to stay. We're going to build a moon base. That's what President Trump's called for in his national space policy.
So this is a very important moon mission for America, but in order for NASA to launch, everything has to be just right, including the weather. Meteorologist Julia Fife joins me. Julia, how's the weather for this?
Hey, Greta. Yes, this is a very exciting day. A lot of preparation went into this. Now we just need the weather to cooperate. NASA meteorologists still say 80% go that this is going to be happening today. Again, that launch time starts at 6:24, so in about 2 hours. But keep in mind, it's a 2-hour window. So from 6:24 to 8:24 is that window that they'll be looking for those weather conditions to be just perfect in order for Artemis II to launch this evening. Forecasted temperature at around 6:24 will be in the upper 70s. So that does reach the criteria for it being able to launch. Here's the required conditions that we have to have in order for that launch to happen this evening. Temperatures have to be anywhere from 38 degrees to 94.5 degrees. Not expecting that to be an issue. Less than 33-mile-per-hour winds. We'll be looking at the ground, even into the mid-levels of the atmosphere as well. No precipitation of any kind. They have had some spotty showers around the launch pad, so that's something we'll be keeping an eye on. It is expected to clear out within the next hour or so. No lightning within 10 miles and no thick clouds. That is also going to be a concern. That is our concern as we head within the next few hours, is those thick cumulus clouds. Now, NASA requires those clouds to be less than 4,500 miles, 4,500 feet. Sorry, that's just less than a mile. So that's what we'll be keeping an eye on. Those cumulus clouds, those are those puffy kind of ones that look like the balls that you put in, the cotton balls that you put in your ear. So if for any reason this launch is a scrub, unfortunately, tomorrow's weather looks worse. So that's something we'll be keeping an eye on. Current temperatures near the launch pad, 78 degrees. That's again right in the criteria, so that's not going to be an issue. We've been keeping an eye on the radar. Spotty showers are currently moving through the area. Again, they're coming off the coast. They're moving in that westward direction. This is right where that launch pad is located. We'll continue to keep an eye on that, but again, it is expected to clear out as a more drier air is going to be moving in throughout that area. So looking at our futurecast as we head into around 6 o'clock, again, that's when that window starts to open up for the launch to occur. We do have some clouds around the area, also some spotty showers just south of the launch pad. Heading into around 10 o'clock, still dealing with those clouds. So again, as long as those clouds clear out and no precip is in sight, I think the launch will take off. Again, NASA is sticking with that 80% go. They have not backed off. So fingers crossed it happens. Back to you, Greta.
Meteorologist Julia Fife, thank you.
Thank you.
That's right. We have a new alert. It is a trivia alert. Here it is. How many members of Congress have been to space during their term? Answer, only 2. In 1985, then Senator of Utah Jake Garn went to space. He was on board the Space Shuttle Discovery. Then a year later, in 1986, then Congressman of Florida Bill Nelson went to space. He was aboard the Columbia Space Shuttle. Now, I'll throw in an extra trivia question. How many former astronauts served in Congress after spending time in space? Answer, 4. former Senator John Glenn, former Senator Harrison Schmitt, former Congressman Jack Swigert, and current Arizona Senator Mark Kelly. Earlier, I spoke with former NASA astronaut and retired Navy captain, Arizona U.S. Senator Mark Kelly. Senator, nice to talk to you.
Good to be on, Greta.
Senator, so what do you think it is for these astronauts? Are they excited or nervous? A little bit of both.
It's probably that and a bunch of other things, too, right? A lot of anticipation. They worked really hard to get here, but this is really an exciting day for them. And they're certainly excited on taking a rocket ship ride into space and to the moon. It's also an exciting day for their families, for NASA, and for the country. It's a really big deal. I mean, it's been decades and decades when we've done anything this ambitious in space. So I'm really happy to be here to see it.
Well, it's very exciting for all of America. It's exciting watching you as well and your brother and all the others who have been on space adventures like this. But what is, I mean, we've done this before. Obviously, I mean, they're just going around the moon this time, but we've actually been on the moon. So are there increased risks this time than 50 years ago?
I wouldn't say it's increased risk, but every space station has a significant amount of risks. I mean, you're flying, you know, something that's operating at the extremes of pressure and temperature, and you go from 0 to 25 times the speed of sound in 8.5 minutes. But what is different this time? You know, it's been a while since we've done this, but the plan with Artemis is in a number of years from now to send astronauts back down to the surface of the moon, but this time to try to build an economy on the lunar surface like we have done in low Earth orbit. So this is different. It's going to help us grow the economy. The aerospace industry will become, you know, bigger, more robust. And it's, you know, something that's very uniquely American. So I'm proud to be here, and I'm glad NASA's doing this.
Well, I bet you are proud to be there. I mean, what a thrill. I'm jealous. Is the space vehicle, is the Artemis profoundly different than the other vehicles when we went to the moon?
Well, I mean, no. I mean, with the exception, I'd say one of the big differences, it has solid rocket boosters, you know, strapped to the side, where Saturn V was multiple stages of a liquid rocket. In that sense, it's different, but it's also a smallish capsule. Instead of 3 people, it takes 4 people, in this case around the moon. But eventually, you know, that capsule will go into lunar orbit, and there'll be a lander built by either Blue Origin or SpaceX or another company that'll get crew members down to the surface and back. So the architecture is different, right? It's a different rocket, is different systems built by different people.
What's the big thing we're going to learn? Or what don't we know? What are they going to explore that we don't know anything about right now?
Well, we don't know much about the intended landing area here in future missions on the surface of the moon on the lunar South Pole. And we know that there's water there, you know, in the form of ice. We can use that water to make hydrogen and oxygen, ultimately to have, you know, to provide power and a propulsion system for a spacecraft in the future. But this mission is about testing these systems, which will later grow to a more complex system that allows astronauts to get to the surface and back off and home.
I've always wanted to ask this question. It might sound a little naive, but you've flown 4 times, twice on the Endeavour and twice on Discovery. Were they different vehicles? I mean, are they just like getting into a Chevrolet and a Pontiac? Were those completely different?
So if you're on the inside, it doesn't say if you're on Discovery or Endeavour or Atlantis for that matter. I flew 2 flights on Discovery, 2 on Endeavour. If you were to take the robot arm and kind of swing it around to the left side and point it at the nose, you could read off the side of the vehicle which one you're on. Columbia, before it was lost in 2003 on STS-107, it was a little different on the inside, and the vertical tail on the outside looked a little different. So you could essentially tell Columbia from the other 3, but Atlantis, Discovery, Endeavour were all basically the same.
All right. How far will you be away from the launch and you can be able to feel the Earth shake?
We will feel a lot of vibration from the acoustic energy as it takes off. I think we're about 2.5 miles away from where I'm going to be watching with, a lot of the NASA guests and, family members are, nearby. And there's going to be hundreds of thousands of people here in a little bit over 3 hours to watch this rocket, go uphill.
Where's your brother? He's an astronaut too. Where is he?
He's standing right over there. He's about 10 feet away.
Have people confused the two of you?
They always confuse us. That's the thing about being twins. See, I got him right here, but he's not going to be able to hear you.
Anyway, so I'm insanely. There he is. He does.
Yeah.
There he is.
He's
Anyway,
there.
well, you're the better looking one of the two.
Absolutely. And Greta, why aren't you here? I mean, they didn't put that in the annual budget.
You didn't ask me. I'll be there for the next one. There are going to be a couple of them. So, next time I'll be there with you. Anyway, enjoy the show. I'll watch it from afar. This is so exciting. This is a great time for America. And just think, no one else. We're not going to land on the moon this time, but nobody else has landed on the moon but Americans so far. So
That's
good
right.
for us.
And it's the same thing with Mars. You know how many times the Russians have tried to land something on Mars unsuccessfully? A lot. Well, Greta, thank you. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you. Nice to see you, Senator. Thank you.
Good to see you.
Coming up, a son testifies against his father, who is a doctor, in an attempted murder case. That when the record continues.
Need blood pressure support? Total Beets contain a patented key ingredient clinically shown to deliver 2 times better blood pressure support. That's why Total Beets is the #1 best-selling Beets brand in America. Take control of your health with Total Beets. Search Amazon now for Total Beets.
Every day, bumps and bangs happen. Bruises are optional. Use daily dermatologist-recommended Dermend and reduce the appearance of bruises. Get Dermend Moisturizing Bruise Cream in the first aid aisle.
You woke up with a sore throat and a low-grade fever. You know you are getting sick, so here's your choices. You can get sicker and miss work. Try to see a doctor this week or sit hours in a crowded waiting room at urgent care.
I have a smarter option for you. Open your medical emergency kit. Match your symptoms to doctor-recommended prescription in your booklet and take the right meds now and get well faster.
This is not a first aid kit. It's like having an urgent care in your home. It includes doctor-prescribed medications to treat over 39 medical issues like respiratory infections, strep throat, pneumonia, UTIs, and more.
No waiting to see the doctor and no standing in line at the pharmacy. It's right here.
Every home should have at least one medical emergency kit, and here's how to order.
Order online and save $45. Your kit to treat dozens of common and serious illnesses is rushed to your door. Visit urgentcarekit.com/news, promo code NEWS. That's urgentcarekit.com/news, promo code NEWS.
These days, supporting the right causes matters more than ever. That's why I chose Patriot Mobile. They're not just a great mobile service provider, they're all about giving back. Every bill helps support causes we believe in: family, faith, and freedom. You get great nationwide coverage on all 3 main networks. Even better, you're doing it with an American company that stands up for us. It's time to make the switch, y'all. Let's support a wireless company that's got our back. Go to patriotmobile.com and make the switch today.
Kayla Hamilton is my daughter. She was murdered by an MS-13 gang member. He was an illegal immigrant. Never in a million years I would have thought that this would happen to our family. Think about what Kayla went through that day. She didn't know she was going to lose her life. We should not be fighting against law enforcement and ICE on getting the criminals out. I don't want another parent living the nightmare that I am living.
If your dog struggles with stiff joints, low energy, messy poops, or an itchy coat, the cause might be sitting in your dog's food bowl right now: kibble. That's why we created Badlands Ranch Superfood Complete, gently air-dried, packed with real canine superfoods to help your dog unlock puppy-like energy, smoother digestion, healthier joints, shinier coats, and more. Thousands have already made the switch. Visit your local pet food retailer today.
If you still have bad breath by lunchtime, your mouthwash isn't working. Smart Mouth is the only mouthwash that prevents bad breath for 24 hours. This is the only mouthwash I recommend. Upgrade your mouthwash to Smart Mouth today and never have bad breath again.
Millions of Americans rely on a statin to reduce cholesterol, but statins can deplete CoQ10 levels. I recommend Cunol CoQ10 with 3 times better absorption and the #1 cardiologist recommended form. It helps replenish what statins deplete. Cunol, the brand I trust.
Day 7 of the trial of a doctor in Hawaii. He is charged with attempted second-degree murder for allegedly trying to kill his wife during a hike in March of 2025. In the latest turn of events, the son of the accused Maui doctor took the stand yesterday as a key witness for the prosecution. The son told the jury, quote, he tried to kill her. Her, of course, is the doctor's wife. The son, Emil Koenig, was 19 at the time of the incident. He recalled speaking to his father twice after the alleged attack. The first call was via FaceTime. Here's what he said about the call with his father.
That he would not be making it back to Maui and to take good care of the younger kids, and that he had, that Ari, my stepmom, had been cheating on him, and that he tried to kill her.
During this call, Emil says that he asked his father what he had on his shirt. His father responded, according to his son, oh, it's just her blood. Emil currently lives with his 2 siblings with his stepmother, Ariel Koenig, the wife of the accused doctor. And the world is waiting to hear President Trump's message tonight on Iran. But in the meantime, what is the president's approval rating? According to the latest Decision Desk HQ poll, President Trump's approval rating is 39.50%. That's low, but not as low as it was 11 days ago on March 20th. On that date, his approval rate was 6.5 points lower at 33%. Former White House Chief of Staff in the first Trump administration, Mark Meadows, joins me. Nice to talk to you, sir. And since you've been there, first of all, what room is he likely to give this address to the nation? It's like, how do you choose between the East Room, the Oval Office, the diplomat room? How do you choose?
You know, it's really the president's choice. Oftentimes, when it's something this, he'll go from the Oval Office. But really, that's kind of a call that they're making today, and the president, based on the message, will choose one of those. I can tell you, it'll be must-watch TV. I was with a group of probably 36 conservative Capitol Hill chiefs of staff and legislative directors yesterday, and they're all anxious to see the progress that's been made. But ultimately, the question is when will this all end? And I think that's what America will tune in tonight. And yet it will be hopefully a real good update, but a cautious, I would say, because the Iranians are very hard to trust. The intel that comes in is, well, you can't trust this and you can't trust. And yet the president is a real trusting negotiator, and so we will see that tonight in real time. But obviously, the president wants to make sure that he takes that message directly to the American people.
Well, thinking about, though, that it was announced, I think, yesterday or late yesterday. He's been busy at the Supreme Court today. I don't know how much, he writes this, how much somebody else does. And he always sort of goes rogue on the speech, because even if, sometimes we get the embargoed speech and we're following along line by line. And the next thing we know is we don't know where we are because he decides to talk to the American people without the script.
Well, that's what I love about him. Now, I will say the people who write the speech and who are trying to keep him on script, they're the ones that are pulling out their hair. But the American people love the fact that Donald Trump is willing to be not only transparent, but real. And so I argue that every line of any speech that he gives is reviewed by him. Oftentimes in the last few hours, he'll be making change that signature black Sharpie that he uses President Donald Trump's name on it, and so he makes those. But it's really about making sure that that message comes across. One of the things I think to reassure the American people is, and perhaps the globe, is only seen a fraction of the American military might, and it is time for them to make a deal, and I believe that they will.
Well, I'll bet my right arm, and you probably won't bet against me on this, that his speech will be shown over Iranian TV tomorrow with a very different translation than we're going to probably hear tonight. I mean, it's like, the translation's going to be something else.
Well, and obviously there will be much to be denied, and this is not happening. They've got to manage their internal politics there in Iran. But I can tell you the one thing that they don't have is our American military capability. So if they're underestimating this president, and oftentimes his enemies often do that, he is a very capable negotiator, but he's also one that has a red line drawn. And when he thinks that they're not responding reasonably, he's not afraid to use the military might.
And indeed, and my guess it's the Oval Office tonight, but that's a guess. Mark Meadows, former Chief of Staff, thank you as always.
Great to be with you, Greta. Take care. God bless.
Coming up, who is Trump calling a paper tiger now? That when the record continues.
AI company Palantir makes critical decisions for governments around the world. In 2019, Palantir bought $50 million in gold in case of black swan events. Not surprising what followed. In 2020, a pandemic shut down the global economy. And in 2022, Russia invaded Ukraine. In 2023, we had a regional banking collapse. And in 2026, could a 1929-style market crash be the final straw? Give Patriot Gold Group a call at 888-528-4290 before it's too late. Patriot Gold Group is Consumer Affairs' top-rated gold and silver dealer 9 years in a row. Home of the No Fee for Life IRA. Patriot Gold Group is patriots protecting patriots. Call now, 888-528-4290.
No. Is this the episode with the breakup? Reba, we can't agree on the house. Y'all need Realtor.com. With over 500,000 new listings every month, you could find the one today. This could be it. Better put a key ring on it. Realtor.com.
Thanks to Jointivia, I'm back in the swing of things. Wait, $70 for a refill?
You gotta try Single Care. Just look up your prescription, show the coupon at the pharmacy, and save.
See why more people are saving with Single Care. For pain in multiple spots like here, here, or here, Salonpas patches stick firmly and remove comfortably once your pain is gone. Salonpas. It's good medicine.
I'm Elmer Heinrich, at 92 years of age with my wife Shirley, who is 83. Now both of us are still cutting a wide swath in life, all because of Immuno 150. Now neither of us have any kind of sickness, and we're as flexible as we were 30 years ago, and we still do the physical things we did 30 years ago. Now we are asking you to use Immuno 150 like we do. Give it a chance for at least 90 days so that you can see what 70 plant minerals and 80 additional nutrients can do for you. You won't believe it. Immuno 150 is an awesome nutritional supplement. There's nothing like it.
Yes, it really is incredible.
Yeah, try it. You will be surprised. Order online or call the number listed on the screen, but don't place your order until after you've watched the 3 videos on our website. Thank you from both of us, and God bless.
Simparica Trio protects against 3 categories of parasites.
Power of disease.
This drug class has been associated with neurologic side effects, including seizures. Use with caution in dogs with or without a history of these disorders. Don't just protect, triple protect.
As you know, in just a few hours, President Trump will address the nation about war with Iran. But in anticipation of the address, this morning the president was asked in an interview with The Telegraph if he would consider pulling the United States out of NATO, since NATO failed to join the war against Iran. The president responding saying, quote, Oh, yes. I would say it is beyond reconsideration. I was never swayed by NATO. I always knew they were a paper tiger, and Putin knows that too, by the way. End quote. Foreign Affairs correspondent Alex Salvi joins us. Nice to see you, Alex.
Yeah, Greta, this is becoming a theme for President Trump. As we know, he's been putting the pressure on the alliance to increase their defense spending. He's been asking them to do more when it comes to Ukraine. And now when it comes to the Middle East, he's talking about getting out of the NATO alliance altogether, citing the failure of other members to help out with Operation Epic Fury, whether it comes to the military aspect or when it comes to the economic aspect. The president telling The Telegraph that the 77-year-old defensive alliance is a, quote, paper tiger, adding that leaving the group is beyond reconsideration. That's the way that he put it. Trump, as you mentioned, is angered by European allies refusing to send warships to assist in reopening the Strait of Hormuz, and the recent decision by some allies to block the United States from using their airspace and bases to launch attacks against Iran. Both France and Spain are prohibiting U.S.-linked aircraft from using their territory for logistics concerning the operation. The United Kingdom also initially refusing to let the base be used for U.S. operations before changing course once Iran attacked neighbors and closed the Strait of Hormuz, therefore directly affecting the United Kingdom. Now, Trump's concerns are also being echoed by Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who says that after the war is over, U.S. participation in NATO will be re-examined. He's emphasizing the fact that the United States is not asking allies to participate in the war directly, but to simply provide access to existing infrastructure, which he says is a long-standing pillar of the alliance, at least until recently.
We are going to have to re-examine whether or not this alliance that has served this country well for a while is still serving that purpose, or is it now become a one-way street where America is simply in a position to defend Europe?
Now, those remarks are fueling speculation that President Trump could make a major announcement about the alliance during his address tonight. White House sources tell me that while Trump will likely voice his frustrations with NATO, he has not made a decision on the future of U.S. participation in the alliance, at least not yet, Greta.
Alex Salvi, thank you.
Thank you.
Coming up, an intruder tried entering a government building, but a hero stopped him in his tracks. Who was it? That when the record continues.
Hey, I'm Carl Higbee from Newsmax. Look, I'm unapologetically pro-American, and honestly, this is the one place that lets me call it how it is. I'm not holding back. I'll give it to you straight every single night.
I'm Guy Fieri, and I'm asking for your help in supporting the Tunnel to Towers Foundation as it continues to pay off the mortgages for fallen first responders and Gold Star families who have died in the line of duty and left behind young children. Not only that, but they are also building mortgage-free smart homes for catastrophically injured service members and have recently committed to eradicating homelessness amongst our veterans. We ask you to join us on our mission to do good. Go to T2T.org and donate today.
The biggest selection of plants and trees, perfect for your yard. That's what FastGrowingTrees.com delivers. And every tree comes with our Alive and Thrive guarantee. Get the plants you want and the results you'll love. Save now at FastGrowingTrees.com.
Why go on Roe? Because 1 in 4 guys experience ED. Guys, connect with a provider to find treatment that could be right for you, like fast-acting dissolvables or daily gummies. If 1 in 4 guys deal with ED, then 1 in 4 guys should go on Roe.
Science didn't stop at diet and exercise. Why would you? Super Beats by Human delivers blood pressure support with clinically researched ingredients. Because cardiovascular health is everything health. Available at your local Costco.
Before Apoquel Chewable for allergic itch, giving dogs pills was a battle of wits.
Oh, Maria, I'm wise to your foolish game.
Is it gone?
Totally gone.
Relief for itchy dogs can be easier. Apoquel, the trusted #1 treatment for allergic itch, is available in a tasty chewable that works fast.
May cause worsening of existing parasitic skin infestations, serious infections, or pre-existing cancers. New neoplasias have been observed. Do not use in dogs under 12 months of age with serious infections or in breeding, pregnant, or lactating dogs.
Ask your vet for Apoquel Chewable.
Do it!
Stop. Check this out. Our most advanced performance frame, Talon, is out. It's a bestseller. We just got it back in stock, and I want to show you a little bit about it. These come with our signature lost and broken protection, and you can try them risk-free for 30 days. Check them out at ShadyRays.com.
What if you're sick at home or traveling and can't get medical help or prescriptions? Doctors say a medical emergency kit is the answer. Joining me is Dr. Drew.
Thank you. And yes, these kits put you in charge of your health. They come with physician-prescribed medication to treat multiple common and some serious issues as well.
What are some examples?
Sure. Generic Z-Pak, amoxicillin, other essential antibiotics and antivirals that treat flu, pneumonia, strep, ear infections, sinus infections, urinary tract infections, and more.
So it is like urgent care and a pharmacy at home?
Exactly. No waiting, no pharmacy, no copays. You feel better faster and avoid serious complications.
How do you know what medicines to take?
You just match your symptoms to the doctor-written guide or schedule a quick telehealth call.
Sound advice. Order online in minutes at the website below and save $45. Thank you, doctor.
Visit urgentcarekit.com/news, promo code news.
Don't kibble your dog.
Hey, Dr. Marty.
Hey, back.
What's wrong with this?
Let's check it out. It's still kibble, which means they're ultra-processed. At Dr. Marty, we freeze-dried premium meats, fruit, and vegetables, and it's available at your local pet store.
Forget the warm-up. DirecTV got hot. They're on fire with more MLB games than anyone. Welcome to the big leagues, kid.
How old are you?
11.
From allies to enemies? In New York City, firefighters and police often work hand in hand. Together, they respond to emergencies and protect the 8 million people who call the city home. Well, that's unless hockey's involved. Look at this video. Over the weekend, the NYPD wearing green faced off against the FDNY wearing red. It was a charity hockey game, but the fists started flying. The score was tied 1-1, and players on both sides got heated. Referees ended up stepping in. Several players on both sides were sent to the penalty box. The NYPD ended up winning the game 3-2, so the NYPD better hope no police precinct has a fire in the near future. And he's back. Earlier today in London, Larry the Cat was caught on video doing his job as the chief mouser. At the time, Larry stepped up. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer was giving a press conference inside 10 Downing Street. Larry the Cat was working security outside. That's when he was approached by a potential intruder, a mouse. Larry acted quickly. He crossed the street and stopped the intruder. After Larry's successful mission, reporters covering the breaking news said this.
Perhaps that's the most interesting thing that happened today in Downing Street.
Oh, goodness me.
This is not an April Fool.
No.
Larry the Cat has killed a mouse. GB News caught the footage. I've never known that mouse do anything useful apart from be photographed like a printing model. The mouse now has a use. So the cat has a use. It's finally killed a mouse.
Well, he does have a title, doesn't he, Larry? The chief mouser, or chief mouser to the First Lord of the Treasury, I think is his official title. So at least he is doing his job, unlike many in the building behind you.
Ooh, that was a bit harsh, but Larry is actually very experienced. In 2011, he made his first kill. That was just 4 months on the job. Larry's now 19 years old and has lived through not only mice, but 6 British prime ministers. And to end his busy day, he enjoyed some well-deserved rest in the fresh air. Thanks for watching. Ed Henry, The Big Take, is next. Stay with Newsmax.